You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network, live on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Coming at you, Ramley. This is your Rams Talk, Rams Preview, Rams Broncos this Saturday. It's Saturday, right?
This Saturday.
This Saturday. Yeah. And then preseason is done, and we are on to regular season football. Cannot wait. Joined by Skinny T, our Rams expert here at the LA Football Network. What's up, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing very well. Football is upon us. We got USC playing this Saturday, Rams playing shortly thereafter. Football's happening, man.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Yeah, week 0 in college, USC, one of the games. Ironically enough, you know, they're the number 6 ranked team in the country, and they're on the Pac-12 network where no one can watch them. But I will be there in attendance at the Collie. Any Rams fans, if you're Trojan fans, say what up. I'll be at the Collie drinking some Fight On Pale Ale, hanging out with a bunch of great people covering the game, so it should be fun. But this is Rams Talk here for the next 20 or so minutes. Big final preseason game. This is, Ryan, in my opinion, one of the most important preseasons for this Rams team, probably since Sean McVay's been head coach, because there's so much unknown, there's so much youth, and then there's so much importance of building blocks heading into next year. Yes, we're in 2023. Yes, I believe probably more than others, this team can potentially make the playoffs, sneak in, if you will, with 8 wins or so. However, the true goal of this season is putting forth the correct stepping stones and foundation for 2024 and beyond. So very important preseason. I'm excited to get into it with you. Show brought to you, as always, by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. If you're a degenerate and want to bet on the preseason, you get a 50% welcome bonus with that promo code, and you can bet on Rams Broncos and a bunch of third stringers. But why not? Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, you know, all talks, Ryan, of this week, joint practices in Denver with the Broncos. Everything I've heard is the Rams kind of dominated all of practices. Have you heard any differently, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's exactly what I've heard, and I have no idea what it means.
I don't either.
You know, it's the practices matter less than the games that they're playing, but you know, it's really coming down to the 53-man roster and who's getting on, who's getting left off, and as you were saying, it's super important because there's a lot of unknowns for this Rams team. So the more live action that these young guys are getting, the more reps they're getting against actual NFL players, it'll make it more clear for this coaching staff, the Rams coaching staff, to figure out exactly who they got and who they don't. Yeah,
I think what's exciting for me in hearing how they did it in joint practices is that in those situations, the starters are actually out there playing. Like, you're getting Stafford going against Broncos' number 1 defense. You're getting Aaron Donald. You're getting the starting corners going against the Broncos' starting wide receivers. Whereas in preseason, obviously under McVay, we don't see many, if any, starters, sure not the stars, in preseason. You're basically using the games as like figuring out your depth and you know, your final maybe 12 roster spots. So hearing that this starting defense that has so many question marks, so much youth, was actually holding their own, and not only holding their own, but somewhat dominating the Broncos starting offense, I think is very encouraging if you're a Rams fan to hear that, because outside of Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones, and Jordan Fuller, you're kind of 3 pillars along each level of defense. A lot of unknown outside of that. So I think hearing that they played so well is got to be a bright spot and encouraging. I don't think the game Saturday necessarily matters as much as hearing all that with the starters.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's especially on the defensive side. You know, we know there's more knowns on the offensive side than there is on the defensive side. So that's fantastic to hear that some of those younger guys are coming along and that the starters are still the dudes. So.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on the offensive line? We got this big Joe Noteboom conundrum, if you will, where you have Big Whit during the preseason game last week called him undeniably one of the top 5 offensive linemen, and he will start. I think McVay has said they're still encouraged by where they can have him, but then hasn't been practicing for an undisclosed reason, whether it's injury, personal, or a Cam Akers-like situation of being in the doghouse. None of us really know. Yeah. What do you make of the offensive line situation?
It's murky. it's not clear. I think the one undisputable thing is Steve Avila is a guy.
He's a dude.
Yeah, he's a dude. He's pushing people around out there, which is great to see. Outside of that, I am not. I have very little insight on it, and it's hard for me to kind of give you any definites that are going to be along the offensive line. They're paying him a lot of money, but that's not a reason to start a guy if he's not contributing. I've seen some quotes, that there's guys still learning to work together.
Yeah.
And after all the injuries from last year, it's no wonder. I mean, this is a whole new unit, basically. Alaric Jackson has been playing a lot of left tackle. Good hearing good things about him, but he's hardly played at the pro level. So, still a ton of question marks there. They're not going to be as injured as they were last year, so they are going to be better. Period, hands down. But where do they rank? I love Whitworth's enthusiasm for his former teammate. I do not agree with him, though.
I don't think many do.
I don't think he's as trash as some people out there on Twitter and the rest of the internet are talking about Noteboom. I think he is a starter of this group. Where he plays, though, I don't know.
I mean, in the limited time we've seen him out there, I do think we've seen him play at his best inside at the guard position. I think that's where maybe it's because you have support beside you, maybe whatever his side, whatever it may be. But I think when we saw him spot start in that, it went much better than when he's had to play tackle. And, he spot started for Whitworth 3 times and played okay at tackle as well, but just wasn't consistent. And so going into a full season, you want that consistency. And I think Jackson showed a little bit more of that. Are we in somewhat agreement that we think, what do you think the starting 5 should be based on what you've seen at camp and in these games so far?
So I'm thinking left tackle, Alaric Jackson, going left to right, Steve Avila, Coleman Shelton, Noteboom, and then Havenstein, obviously, at right tackle.
I think that's kind of the consensus is that right guard. Is it going to be Noteboom? Is it going to be Tremaine Ankrum? Are they going to have Brian Allen still play center and kick Coleman Shelton to that guard? That seems to be the big spot, right guard, who's going to be there.
Yeah, and Tremaine Ankrum played a ton during training camp at that spot. So I don't know. It's a mystery. My biggest going back a couple of seasons, I think going into the 2021 season, they switched right at the end. It was all training camp. It was right. I don't remember the exact lineup, but right before regular season kicked off, everything just kind of switched and fell into place, and it worked out.
Yeah, that's right. That was a very last-minute switch. I remember that. That was a crazy
situation.
Corbin,
I think, was involved in that.
Yes. And, what's frustrating a little bit to me, and I said this on Twitter last week and during the game, I understand McVay's decision, and basically he's the one that changed it for the league to not play starters in preseason. I get they're meaningless games. You don't want to risk injury. I get that. I agree with that overall, especially with players like Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp. We know what they are. Why are you even thinking of trying this guy? We know. But when you have position groups and players you don't know what you have, and yes, they're in practice, so I'm sure McVay would say, we do know. We see them in practice every day. But I think there's still something, and again, McVay is much smarter than me, so I don't want to act like I'm totally questioning him, but we're sitting here on a microphone talking. Why not talk about it?
Yeah.
When you have so much unknown at offensive line, and even if you know this is going to be my starting 5, outside of practice reps, where you're really not going full bore, especially in your own practices. Joint practices, I think, are a little more physical, of course, but you're still not having that true game time speed. Now, they can say it's more beneficial, all this stuff, but I don't think it is the true game time speed, even when you are actually hitting and having pads on and doing that. And so when you have a unit of 5 that most likely have never played a game together, let alone a snap together in a game situation, to me, that unit, maybe just that unit, maybe no other starters across the board for the Rams, but that unit to me needs to get a few series just to get some continuity going. Because last year, what started the precedent for how the season was that week 1 game against Buffalo, and the offensive line got obliterated by the Bills' defensive line. Granted, regardless if they had continuity or not, the Bills' defensive line was a much more talented unit.
Yep. But
having some continuity would certainly help. And this Rams offensive line, which I agree with you, will be a twofold better. They won't be as injured. they still just haven't played together. And so going into week 1 with no reps worries me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can't disagree there. I would love to see it, just to see how that running game is going to look, just to see how the pass protection is going to look. And then I think that answers a lot of questions. And I think going up, putting that squad up against Denver would be a good challenge, because they've got some depth along there, and that pass rush is what any good things that came out of last year for Denver. It was that pass rush, so it would be a good test to see, does Alaric Jackson have what it takes to go a whole game. Just get continuity, as you were saying. I would actually love to see Stafford out there for a few series, because last season he had such a hard time finding connections other than Cooper Kupp. And this year it's going to be, outside of Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson, another group of new starters and new role players for the receivers. So, yeah. But that's,
he won't be playing.
He won't be playing.
We know that. And unfortunately, with this new kind of preseason schedule of just 3 games, if McVay were to buck that trend at all, it probably would have been in week 2. I don't think he'll do it in week 3, which usually now this 3rd game is across the league wide. It was kind of like the old week 4 game, which was just all backups and stuff. So I don't think we'll see that, but that's just one thing I would have liked to have seen, and not from just a viewing standpoint, but from a development standpoint and just knowing what we have in that unit and whatnot. So, but let's look forward now to this game with the Broncos. Most likely we'll not be seeing that. Who on offense, and we'll go to defense, who are you looking forward to really seeing out there? Is it the wide receiver death? Is it more this, we've seen a lot of the running back death, because no Cam Akers, no Kyren Williams. So obviously those have been ingrained as RB1 and 2, which I think is great for Kyren Williams. But we've seen a lot of Ronnie Rivers. We've seen a lot of Zach Evans and whatnot. We've seen a lot of these depth receivers, and one of my favorites in Tyler Johnson and Puka Nacua and what. So who are you most looking forward to on offense, kind of seen out there to either, like we said on the Chargers segment, build themselves into a role on Sundays, or just kind of on that bubble to make the roster?
Yeah, receivers is the one big question. I think everything else in terms of the role players is already solidified. And if you look at the players that haven't played, as we've talked about with McVay, who is he keeping out? It seems like Tutu Atwell has not played at all. No. Is solidified as a starter.
Must be a good thing.
Which is crazy to think about. And then, Tyler Johnson has stood out. Demarcus Robinson, surprisingly, has not as much.
Yeah. It's still, not to cut you off, but at this point, and again, it's not like Stafford's throwing him, but Demarcus Robinson, who I kind of called a sleeper going into this year, I think he has a lot of he kind of has a vibe of being able to be that guy that was talented, but just on a very deep team, and now comes here and can kind of shine. But he's having that vibe a little bit of like Allen Robinson last year, where he was bringing talent, but just doesn't seem like there's a connection there yet. Granted, he's only getting thrown to by the backups and not Stafford, so we'll see if that changes, but that's just the vibe I've gotten so far.
Yeah, definitely. And in training camp, he got targeted a ton. It's kind of the opposite of what's happening now in preseason, as Tyler Johnson was kind of a supplemental guy, and Demarcus Robinson was just getting tons of targets. So yeah, I think their receiving group is just the most interesting, the most moving parts. Puka Nacua has done great things, which everybody was kind of expecting. Yeah. Coming out of college. We've got Van Jefferson on his last year of his rookie deal. What does that mean for Nacua? And an interesting thing is Ben Skowronek, who has been a starter, who's been a role player the last 2 seasons. He's kind of in the mix in that way. He's not playing as many snaps as some of these other guys, but he's out there. Yeah. So I wonder what his role is going to look like going forward. Lance McCutcheon is another interesting name. Darling of last season's preseason games, this season not playing as much. So he's kind of playing the similar role as, is he kind of locked in there as one of the 5-6 receiver spots?
So let's keep it on the receivers real quick. So you look at, obviously, I think you're just proven by what they've done in preseason by not playing. Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell seem to be your wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or at least 3 that are kind of guaranteed to roster. Obviously, the first 2 are guaranteed, and Tutu seems like he's earned that as well. I wouldn't think the Rams keep more than 6. I don't think they keep 7. I think 6 is probably the number, especially with the talent they have at the tight end room, especially with the talent they have in the running back room, and obviously needing some offensive line depth due to the injury history there. So I think 6 is probably your number. Maybe 5, but probably 6. So in your opinion, who are the final 3? I mean, we'll see them play a lot this on Saturday, and then the decision to cut day is just a few days later. So who's your final 3 making the squad?
Yeah. Okay. So Tutu. Okay. So I think Tyler Johnson is a lock. Skowronek is in there still.
It's tough.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like Nakua is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Demarcus Robinson doesn't make it?
I guess not.
See, I'm in a weird, and I think the fan base is very different than this. I think it'll be Robinson, Puka Nakua, and Tyler Johnson. I think Skowronek might be the odd man out.
Wow.
And the reason why, and this could go a completely different way, because I don't think it's because he's played poorly or whatever, but I think the way that he's been kind of that jack of all trades utilized, and I've said this before, so if you listen to the show, you're going to have to hear me say it again, but he's that guy that can kind of do it all, but he's not really great at one thing, right?
Sure.
Like he does receiver, he can go over the middle, he can play fullback, he can play some tight end, so he can do it all. But because they've gotten talented more at other positions, like they have some talented tight ends. Zach Allen looked great their draft pick looked great. They've talked about the emergence and the growth of not just Hunter Long, but Bryson Hopkins has looked a lot better this year. So they have a little stronger tight end depth. And receivers, I think you get something out of Puka Nakua on that end-around game, plus some versatility in him. You get Tyler Johnson, who's uber talented, just didn't really have an opportunity in Tampa, and he's looked really good. And then Demarcus Robinson, like I said, is just a guy I think has had a lot of talent. He's a veteran presence going into year 7. So I think Skowronek might be the odd man out unless they decide that versatility is worth more than a player who might be a little better at every little thing.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, I have to say.
I'm not saying I'm going to be right. I'll probably be wrong. I also just love Tyler Johnson. There's no way I think they're keeping Puka Nakua. He seems to be the darling, and they drafted him. He was this year's draft class, and so it comes down to Johnson, Robinson, and Skowronek.
Yeah, I mean,
2 out of those 3.
The Rams have not shown hesitation to cut and run. So I mean,
yeah.
And it's just strange because he had put so much time in and he's gotten so much opportunity. But this is the business of football.
So let me ask you that then: is there a world you see where they keep 7 receivers?
It just the math gets tough, when you look at you got at least 3 running backs.
Yeah.
The math just gets really hard there.
Yeah.
I think that they can, has Skowronek shown enough that a team is going to swoop in and scoop him up?
That's a good point.
Can they stash him on the practice squad? So, yeah. I mean, the math just gets really hard.
Yeah, it's tough, and that would be a tough pill to swallow because I think he's improved so much and grown and since he's been here, and obviously has been, he was integral in some situations in that Super Bowl run, and then last year kind of became wide receiver 2 basically, or even wide receiver 1 in some weeks, and playing fullback and tight end. So I love his versatility. We'll see if that lasts. So obviously the way we do things, we're already up against the clock. So give me one key for this game that you care most about, whether that's a player, a bubble player, whether that's a schematic thing, whether that's something on defense. So in this game against the Broncos, what are you most looking forward to or most hoping to see from this Rams squad?
Trey Tomlinson.
Baller. He might not even play because he's played so well. So
yeah, I would like to see him play just to see has what we've seen, is that going to bear out for another game? I would love to see that. Oh man, there's so many questions on defense that I don't even really. I would like to see edge rushers getting pressure.
Yeah. Yes. What is it, like one guy? Only one guy's even in the top like
Keir
30?
Keir Thomas has 5. He's coming out of nowhere. Maybe he's going to earn himself a starting role over Michael Hoyt. Maybe, I don't know. I would just like to see some of those drafted players Daniel Hardy. I don't think O'Shawn Mathis will probably play due to injury. So I'd like to see Daniel Hardy.
Yeah, I like that one.
Get some pressure. He's got 1 sack, 1 pressure, I think, so far. I think that's my guy that I need to see some work out of. Robert Rochelle, is he real? He's had a pretty good preseason. Is he a guy that they can rely on? There's just so many questions in the backfield and then along the line. Just pressure. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see some pressure.
Pressure. I like that. That's a good theme. For me, I'm looking forward to watching Quentin Lake more. I think he's had a great camp. He's been tremendous in special teams. That's where he's going to kind of eat his cake there. And then also as depth safety piece and has done some nice things. So love watching Quentin Lake out there. And I'm excited to see the coaches cam again. Sean McVay had the coaches cam last week when they got the interception, watching him break it down. That was so fun. So I'm loving the access we're getting on the sideline there for the Rams. They can have some fun. Yeah. But that's all the time we got for the LA Football Show Rams edition here on the My Dear 1090 ESPN Radio podcast. Thank you all for hanging out. Everyone enjoy the game Saturday. Next week, we got real football coming up. Sir. Can't wait to share with all you guys. Have a great weekend. Enjoy. Talk to you soon.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.